Good morning and welcome to Recipe for Success. My name is Nancy Giacalone and we are live and in person today. It's been a while since I've done an in-person event, and it's even been a few months. I was looking at the last one, that Recipe for Success that I did, and it was back at the end of June. So we're long overdue. And I'm really excited about my guest today. I have with me today Brad Perry. He is somebody that I actually went to high school with. You can look at us and you can do the math. So it's been a while ago. But one of the reasons that we decided to do this live together today is that October is Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. And Brad has a very personal experience with it. So I'd like to introduce, I'm sorry, should I be calling you Brad or Bradley Perry? To me, I want to call you Brad.
You can call me Brad.
Okay, that feels more natural to me. Brad is the owner and founder of Flatliner Fitness. You can tell by the name that that's something he probably came up with after something to do with a sudden cardiac arrest event. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself to the audience. Tell everyone a little bit about your professional background and why you're here today.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Perry, and I experienced sudden cardiac arrest on February 15th, 2020. So right before the big COVID event came upon us. And I spent a little time on the other side. And it was an interesting experience. And I think it's one that most people would really enjoy preventing if they can, because it isn't super fun. My background at that time is I was a retailer. And I had been a retailer for about 40 years and worked for several large corporations, had a great deal of responsibility and was under a lot of pressure. And I'd certainly be happy to talk more about it, but pressure, Nancy, can create some very unpleasant heart conditions, and those heart conditions can be catastrophic and often are about 92% of the time. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And I came up with Flatliner just basically one day as I was driving down the road, and it became a license plate. And then from a license plate, it evolved into a business, and from a business, it's going to evolve into a lot of different arms and vehicles.
Okay, so let's talk about what that was like for you when that happened, because I'm sure that obviously you weren't anticipating it, and just tell us a little bit more about that event. How long were you in the hospital? What were the weeks like following that? I'd like to know a little bit more about what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the story of the event first. If that's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
The story of the event is this. I was playing tennis at St. John's Racket Club over in Portland. And I live on the other side of the river in Washington. And I started to feel a lot of chest pressure, like there was a 45-pound plate from lifting weights sitting on my chest. And then partway through the match, I began to feel a little bit of soreness in my arm. But I didn't really worry about it too much because I had fallen earlier in the match, and I just thought, oh, I fell. But when my jaw started to hurt, I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was in real trouble, and I was very aware of what was going on. So like the intelligent guy that I am, I wanted to continue the tennis match. I played about a set and a half of tennis through all of this. And the guy I was playing with was like, dude, you don't look good. We got to retire. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not a quitter. I don't retire. And he said, well, I do. And so you do. So he retired the match. I then proceeded to get in my car and drive myself 14 miles from St. John's Racket Club to Legacy Emmanuel Hospital. Interesting experience. About 2 miles south, I became a little bit groggy and incapacitated. And I proceeded to call Julie, another person that we went to high school with, was my life partner, and tell her, I can't figure out how to get to the hospital. I can't remember what exit it is. And she said, 139, go through the stoplight. What is going on? Because there's only 2 reasons to go to the hospital as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Birth and death. And I knew which one was facing me. We lived 2 miles north of there. I was 2 miles south of there. She got in the car, immediately started driving down the road, and I drove to the hospital. I got there at 10 p.m. I proceeded to tell them I think I'm having a heart attack, and they sat me in. She wouldn't believe that because I could get myself there and walk into the lobby that I was having a heart attack. So I was sitting in the lobby having this almost out-of-body experience, thinking, well, I know what the outcome of this is. It was 10 p.m. at night, and I was like, I wonder how these people's lives in the lobby are going to be changed when I drop over dead, and they're going to be a massive ensue of activity. Well, that was the good news. I was there about 2 or 3 minutes. They called me into triage. They asked me one question. Apparently, Julie arrived simultaneously. Now, one of the side effects of sudden cardiac arrest is that I have no recall of her actually arriving. But she got there just in time for the big event, because at 10:05 p.m., she said, "You don't look very good, babe." And I said, "I don't feel very good." Boom, lights out. So then it all begins. Now I fall over dead on top of Julie. She's mortified, freaking out. The gal who was in triage, freaking out. And pretty soon there's a crash team there and everything is happening. Now, bear in mind, I'm not giving this to you from recall.
This is from Julie's perspective.
Julie's perspective. And thank God for Julie to give me that perspective. Otherwise, I'd have no memory of it whatsoever. So there you are, you're dead. The crash team arrives. They begin to perform CPR on you, which, by the way, is a horrible, violent experience. But it does have one benefit, and that is that it keeps your blood flowing. Not your heart pumping, but your blood flowing. And that's important for the aftermath of a cardiac arrest. So eventually they get the paddles out, they zap me, horrible experience, I come back to life. Now the problem is not solved because the lower anterior descending artery, which is known as the widowmaker, is entirely blocked. So the heart is beating, but the blood is not pumping the way that it should through the body. And then I went to the hospital in town that doesn't do cardiac surgery. So they had to put me in an ambulance. And the ride and all of that event was pretty horrible because the compression of CPR has side effects, and they're not very pleasant. It involves severe vomiting and being sick, and you're having a heart attack. And I remember bits and pieces of this because I was in and out of consciousness, but I turned to one of the EMTs and I said, "Look, man, just let me die. Like, just let me die." And he's like, "No way, dude, we're going to save you." And I tell you, in all honesty, if I could have punched him in the face at that moment in time, I would have, right? Because it was an extraordinary amount of pain. Coming back from death is not a pleasant experience.
It's not like in the movies where the clouds and you just kind of just ascend.
No, it is completely not like in the movies. It's like going from what I call the void, where it's peaceful and dark and warm and you're comfortable. And life is pretty good, actually. You're like, oh, the stress of life is over. I'm at peace. To the exact opposite. So that's like being in the womb. If you could remember what it's like to be in the womb when you were an infant, it's like that. Coming back is like being rebirthed. There's bright lights. You don't know who you are. You don't know how you got there. I was dead. Now that's my experience. I have friends who have an entirely different account of this experience. They were just super grateful. That was not me. I'm here to tell you. Yeah. It became me, but it wasn't me. So that's how it all began.
Nick, can you check the comments and see if we have any questions? No
Nothing
questions
so
yet?
far. Just
Okay.
good, just a good morning.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I want to talk about, so now they brought you back to life.
Yeah.
You're not really happy about the fact that they did so.
I'm not.
What happens next? I mean, how long were you in the hospital? What was the recovery like? How did you reconcile yourself to all of this?
So I'm going to share my experience. This is not a typical experience. It's just kind of speaks to who I am and how I'm wired. I woke up at the hospital 3 a.m. following an emergency surgery where they went in through my wrist instead of the groin because death was really that imminent. They were concerned I was going to die again and they couldn't bring me back. The surgeon, Dr. Lou, that did my surgery at Peace Health, she was remarkable. She said, I've never had a patient try so hard to die. Like, dude. And I actually got to see the surgery later on down the road. It was really quite interesting and fascinating. So I wake up the event happened at 10:05 p.m. They brought me back around 10:10 p.m. I went into surgery just before around 11:30, and I was done with surgery around midnight. 3 a.m. I wake up in the hospital. I have no idea how I got there. There's Julie, there's my son, there's a friend of ours, Christy, also know from high school. And I am like, okay, how do I get out of here? And they're like, look, man, you don't get out of here. You're going to be here for a long while. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be here for a long while. That's not happening. It's true.
I can relate. I understand.
Yeah, it's just how I'm wired. I was like, I'm not going to be out of here. You tell me what I got to do to get out of this place. They said, you got to walk around the entire lobby 3 times. All right, let's go. No, not tonight. Tomorrow morning, you can try. Okay, so I wasn't able to do it that morning on Sunday morning. But by Monday morning, I was 3 times around the hospital lobby, and I was like, when do I get out? And at 1 p.m. on Monday afternoon, I was released from the hospital and sent home.
So did you have cardiac rehab after you were released, or was it something that you had to figure out on your own? Because I know there are cardiac rehab services available. So what was that?
Yeah, so a bit of both in my experience, and COVID played a role in this.
Oh, of course, I forgot that was in the midst of high COVID.
Right, high COVID, right? So February 15th, I have my near-death experience. Right around the early March, I go into cardiac rehab, and I had a few sessions, and they were like, oh, cardiac rehab canceled. So now I was like, well, fortunately, I know a lot about fitness, played sports when I was young, still reasonably active. I was playing tennis and all those types of activities. What can I do now? And so I had the cardiac rehab people tell me what my limitations were, because as you could probably tell, I'm not a guy that is really hell-bent on limitations, and especially somebody else's. Right? My own, okay, that's my issue. But other people's, I'm a little defiant. So I started my own program of exercise, which involved really at first just barely walking and being happy that I could do it. About a month and a half, 2 months passed, rehab program re-began, and then I was out of there in record time, half the time that they anticipated with twice the capacity. And that really, that is an interesting story, and this will just tell you about who I am as a person. First day of cardiac rehab, there's a young lady. She's standing on the treadmill next to me. She's walking very slow. And she says to me, hey, I haven't seen you before. I said, well, it's my first day. And I'm cruising along about 2.8 miles an hour. Not super fast, but fast for a guy who was just dead. And she said, I said to her, how long have you been here? And she said, 2 years. And I'm like, that is not going to be me. I will heal or I will die. And that became my mentality and my mantra. And that's how cardiac rehab went for me.
So interesting. It's so much to do with your mental attitude. I mean, your mindset, your mental attitude, as far as I'm going to do this, I'm going to do everything possible to be as good as possible, is such a game changer. I mean,
100%.
So, you know, and I'm sure this is part of your program and we'll talk about it, but the physical part is 1/3, I would say. The physical part is 1/3, but the mental part is 2/3 of any recovery program.
Yeah, and there's the emotional part, which we can maybe go into, because that was the part for me that was the tough part. The physical part, I knew how to master physical pain and suffer from sports, from life experiences that occurred before there, because this was not the first time I had some challenges in my life. So yes, there's definitely 3 parts. There's the mind, the body, and the spirit, and all have to be healed. So the physical part, that comes first because it also integrates with the mind, the body, and the spirit. But the mindset is the critical piece. And when I adopted the heal or die mantra, I mean, we used to joke around and Carl just save me whether I want to be or not. So what the heck? Let's go. Let's do this. And that helped me to figure out my parameters so that I knew how far I could push and I wouldn't die.
Right.
So when I was working out on my own, I still had the capability to do well and to do it within reasonable boundaries.
So I'm going to jump around for a minute. So today, are your limitations different than they were prior to your event?
Yes, for several reasons. One, I'm 3.5 years past it right now.
Right.
Okay, so if you go into cardiac statistics, most people who have cardiac arrest don't make it. I did a post this morning from a source that says 92% of people who suffer sudden cardiac arrest die. That means I'm one of 8 out of 100 that survive. That creates some interesting quandaries. Why? The question of why becomes super, super important, or it did to me.
Sure.
And I couldn't figure out the why. That was the tough part. So really working through the mind, the body, the spirit, and the emotional trauma of the experience, that was the hard part for me. The physical part, that was quick and easy. The boundaries today are whatever I want them to be. And to be honest, there's a little more moderation. I allow myself to eat ice cream if I want to. I allow myself to walk versus having to run. I don't have anything to prove to myself at this point. I'm not trying to get my old life back. And I'll talk more about that later.
That's a really great point. I do want to address the point you made about the emotional component about that, because I never thought about that before. But as soon as you said it, I could kind of feel that. So I'd like you to talk about that a little bit more.
I'll try to do that, and I'll try not to let water run out of my eyes, because it still happens, which is 3.5 years later. So the emotional component, it was traumatic. First off, CPR, I would never let a human being beat me like they do for CPR. It was not a joyful experience. I don't have any joyful muscle recall or body recall of it. And it still makes me emotional, right? So that was horrific. Another thing, and it's a funny story, but it was traumatic. I was on the surgical table. I woke up just for an instant when I felt a pair of scissors running up my thigh, and they're cutting off my clothes. And I'm like, what? Because they were preparing the secondary site if the wrist didn't work. But there you are in all your glory in the middle of a heart attack, naked in a room of people. For me, traumatic. But the biggest emotional impact was figuring out why. Why am I here? And that took me months to figure out. Here's the thing about the medical community, and I don't want to bash them because they saved me. Feel free.
Feel free.
Okay, I'll keep it within boundaries. So first off, let me say I'm grateful to the team at Legacy Health for saving my life. Thank you. I wasn't initially, but I was very grateful down the road. And thank you to Julie for asking them to save my life. So you're there, you're not really excited to be here, you're trying to figure out why you're here, and you don't know. And no matter how much you ask and ask and ask for guidance from whoever your creator is, you're not getting the answer. So one day I finally got ridiculously serious and I said, hey man, look, big guy, give me some blanket guidance because I don't know. And he said, or she said, it said, you already have the plan. Your problem is execution. And therefore, if you ever look at my social media, you'll see that I have some consistent posting out there. That's where the post came from. The information in those posts comes from a source outside of myself. I'm just the conduit
Sure. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if anybody has embraced that, I personally am a Christian and I do believe in God. That's not a problem for me. Their choice. So you're welcome to speak about your beliefs as you see fit. So one of the things that obviously you started this. So do you have that within? I'm trying to think how best to phrase this. Kind of just throwing my notes. High press and pressure, especially this time of year. And many of my colleagues in this industry face the same thing because we have a lot of things that come down on us all at one time in a very condensed period of time. And we want to make sure that everybody is as happy as possible. And then we have lives outside of that, families, etc. So it can get to be a lot. And since we're a similar age, what advice would you give to me or to others that are in a similar age group as myself with similar pressures? Signs to be aware of or things to think about?
Yeah, so signs to be aware of. There are definitely signs. A month prior to my sudden cardiac arrest, I went to urgent care one day at Julie's urging. Like I talked about previously, I felt like there was a 45-pound weight just sitting on my chest. If you have that feeling, you need to get looked at. 100%. I'm going to say it again. You need to get looked at because that's a sign that stress is wearing on you. There's other signs that involve your ability to function. Like I was breathing hard going up the stairs. Why? I mean, that doesn't make sense. I was a reasonably fit guy, a little heavier than usual at that time from stress because cortisol buildup creates body fat buildup, right? So get looked at. Here's my fatal point. They did an EKG, came back and said, you have never had a heart attack and you're not having a heart attack. Now, I was pretty sure I'd had at least 2 heart attacks prior to that time. Did I get looked at? No. So there's a downside to being bullheaded.
Yeah.
But I should have. So look for those kinds of stress and pressure signs and get looked at. And when they tell you, we don't do echocardiograms here, make an appointment with your doctor and go and get one. You should go and get one. Not saying it would have prevented my cardiac arrest, probably wouldn't have according to the physicians, but you just never know, and it's worth taking the time to get looked at. There will be signals. Your body, your mind, and your spirit will know
that something's wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. Okay, so now let's talk about your program a little bit. So is it designed to help people that have gone through a sudden cardiac arrest event, or is it designed to help all people? Who would be best suited for what you do?
So I would do one-on-one coaching, and we can adapt the program to the individual. If you want a preventative program, I can help you with that. I can give you a tip, and here it is. Put yourself first. There are 24 hours in a day. If you can't take 1 hour out of your day for yourself to either do a little meditation or a little journaling or go for a walk for 30 minutes, you're misprioritizing. You can't do anything when you're dead. You can't do anything when you're incapacitated from being dead. Coming back is no joyride, and you definitely don't want to go through it. So I can help a person put a program together in an hour that will make them feel better and healthier and be preventative in nature.
Before we move on, I just want to repeat that. You can't do anything when you're dead.
Right.
I mean, that should have been the name of this episode. You can't do anything when you're dead. We are speaking to all you high performers out there. Please, please, please. And I'm speaking to myself. Keep that in mind. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that was very important.
Yeah, it's super important. When you're dead, there's just no coming back, or there is. And that's a whole different story. Because when you come back, the goal is not to get your old life back. The goal is to create a new life. So for all of you, the 8% that died and came back, stop trying to get your old life back. You're wasting your time. You will never move forward trying to get your old life back. Get the version of you that's 2.0 moving in the direction that you were intended to. The signal that you died is a signal from whatever you believe in to get your butt in gear, caught myself, and move forward.
But don't you think that's true of so many major life events that people, marriage, birth of a child, divorce, changing jobs, losing of a parent, you're never going to get your old life back.
Never.
What was before is never going to be
Right.
the same. So it's trying to figure out, how do I live my best life now?
In each moment.
In each moment.
So,
And after each transition.
yes, because life is filled with a series of transitions. I talk a lot about victim, survivor, and thriver, and I'll break that down a little bit. Victim, oh, boo-hoo, world did something bad to me, crap I couldn't control, my life sucks, I'm gonna suffer. Okay, we've all been there. It's not that you're going to be a victim, you will be. How long do you stay a victim? Survivor, I'm gonna use a phrase and try to keep it clean. Survivor is a pissed off victim. Right?
Oh, that's a good term.
I am mad enough that I am now going to do something to change my circumstances. Good for you, but you're still angry. Anger has a place, but it's not a healthy place long term. You talk about stress, anger. If you're angry all the time, your stress level's here, right? You want to get the thriver. Everybody says, oh yeah, everybody uses the word thriver. I was using this long before it became popularized. Thriver is a person who had a negative experience that not only overcame it themselves, but has the capacity to help others overcome it as well.
Those are really good definitions. I think I may have had an experience with a little victim moment this morning myself when we were changing our computers, and that's just always a less than fun experience. And
Sure.
My network people kind of didn't do everything, and I was feeling a little sorry for myself this morning. And then I think I went into the survivor, I guess. Yeah, there was a little anger there.
Yeah.
I will get past it. So, but I'm like, oh, dang it. I just went through those three modes myself this morning.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
that makes perfect sense. Okay. So before we get to the ending of the show, I read that you're writing a book, which I think is super cool. One of those things on my eventual to-do list as well, but I'd like to know what the focus is. Do you have a title for it yet? Just give us a little preview.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things there that I'm working on. Let me tell you what it's a story of. It's a story of my life, and that's a story of resilience and tenacity. And resilience and tenacity will give you most things that you want to achieve in life. Resilience and tenacity from birth. I had tuberculosis at birth. Very rare in 1960.
Yeah.
So to death, February 15th, 2020. To rebirth, and what's next. So that's the topic of the book. I've had a lot of experiences that would kill most people, and I've managed to survive them. So for some reason, I'm here. That I'm clear on. And I feel it's this. The titles of the book, there's two. When I tell people my life story, they say, dude, you must have 9 lives. So one of the possible book titles, and I'd love it if the audience would weigh in on this, is 9 Lives, a story of resilience and tenacity, subtitle.
I like, dude, you must have 9 lives.
It's very possible. Like,
Yeah.
I've only touched on one event. I had COVID the same year I had the heart attack.
Oh my goodness.
So in September, October, just a year ago at this time, 3 years ago at this time, I was in the midst of COVID, and it was a fairly severe case. And I was one of those compromised subjects. That
Sure, of course.
So you can survive COVID.
So what's the other title?
10 foot tall and bulletproof.
Oh, I like that one too.
So, and it's a phrase I've used my whole life. So we'll see where it goes. Weigh in, tell us what you think. Love to hear your perspective. 9 lives or 10 foot tall and bulletproof.
I like the whole one. Dude, you must have 9 lives. It's catchy. I would probably pick that up.
I steal that
They
from
said
you.
9 lives. So
Yeah.
far.
Yep.
So they're getting that one. All right. So we're starting to get toward the end of our show. So every guest must sit through the 5 burning questions.
Okay.
And every guest starts off with the same question, has to tie in with recipe for success, because
Okay.
obviously I like to cook. What is your absolute favorite food in the world?
More comments saying 9 lives.
Oh,
9 lives.
9
Okay.
lives.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Good. What's your absolute favorite food in the world, and can you cook it?
My absolute favorite food is my mom's spaghetti and meatballs. She's not here any longer, but her recipe lives on. And can I cook it? Probably. Do I cook it? Whole nother story. Julie does most of the cooking, if I'm being honest. She can make it and does it very well.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. Yes. So Gail, Judy, and Michelle all said 9 lives.
9 lives.
Okay, so we have a front runner.
Dude.
Yeah, I just think
9
that's
lives.
fun. Okay, so what's the one character trait you admire most in other people, and why?
I'm going to go back to adaptability. Resilience and tenacity are components of adaptability. Adaptability takes you from victim to survivor to thriver. Without adaptability, you will not make it. You'll just be a dinosaur, and we'll be trying to piece your bones together after you pass.
Fair enough. Okay, so now I get to flip the mirror on you and say, what's the character trait in yourself you're most proud of, and why?
You know, I have an innate ability to accept people for who they are, where they are, and really not get caught up in a great deal of judgment. Do I agree with everything that's going on in the world? No, I have some very strong opinions, but those opinions don't keep me from accepting the individual as a human being. I have issues with agendas and special rights, but I don't have issues with people and equal rights.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really awesome answer. Okay, so we talked about the key signs of a sudden cardiac arrest event. So we got that one. All right, here's a fun question.
Okay.
What's your secret talent, or something people would be surprised to learn about you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm still pondering that one because I'm not sure that there's really a secret talent that I have. I'm pretty public, so most of my stuff is out there, but I'll tell you something that people don't know about me, and you'd probably be surprised. I am an introvert. I'm very, very private. I spend most of my time at home, and I enjoy my peace and quiet as much as I enjoy the public spotlight.
So you're what we like to call an extroverted introvert.
Yes.
I'm familiar with that. All right, so last question. Who is the one person, famous or otherwise, living or dead, that you would most love to sit down and have a conversation and a cup of coffee with?
So I'm very fortunate to have a home gym. That's how serious I am about fitness. I'm not going to allow anybody to tell me when I can work out or where I can work out. So I purchased all the equipment to have a home gym. That's my blessing. But on the wall in that gym, there are 2 things. There is a metal piece of framework that says Flatliner Fitness, and there's a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger and a quote. I love that dude. Now, I know he's not always been the perfect human being. What I love about him is he owns it. And I love the fact that he has gone from bodybuilder, which most people think of as being relatively unintelligent people, to actor, to politician, to humanitarian.
Did you see the miniseries on him?
I
The
did.
documentary? That was
I
amazing.
couldn't believe how he owned some of his behavior. He just straight up addressed it.
Yeah.
I was like, he'll never touch that.
And it's hard not to like somebody that lets a mini donkey into their house.
For sure.
So, all right. So thank you so much. Our time is just about up. But if people want to know more about Flatliner Fitness, if they want to get involved with the preventive aspects or maybe the recovery aspects, or they know somebody, a loved one that has gone through something like this and they want to put them in touch with you, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Yeah, so a couple of ways for you to learn more. Number one, I'm on 3 social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So reach out to me through direct messages there. I'd be happy to respond. I'm very active on those particular modems. And if that doesn't work for you and you want a more private way of communicating, reach out to me at flatlinerfitness@gmail.com.
And if anybody forgets any of that, you can reach out to me and I will put you in touch with Brad. This is a super important topic, and it's not one we talk about very often, particularly in this industry with the amount of pressure and all the things going on that we have to deal with. So I'm so appreciative of you making the effort to come up here. For anyone who's wondering, that was about a 2.5-hour drive for him to come here to be in person. It's just so much more authentic and I think impactful to have you here live. So thank you so much for your time today, Brad. I appreciate it. And for anyone else, we do not have another scheduled recipe for success yet, but stay tuned. There may be one coming. Thanks for joining, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.